She was only 18 years old. She was in love. And the man she loved was exactly 19 years older than her and married. No one could have known that this passionate secret affair would become the most expensive love story in Silicon Valley history. And it was such a consuming, scorching love that it would destroy hundreds of thousands of lives and hopes, costing romantic investors who believed in them $945 million. And in the end, both lovers' love nest would become federal prison. The love story you're about to watch isn't an ordinary love story. It's the story of how love, excessive ambition, and unbridled fantasy led to the biggest fraud in American history. A promising Stanford student, in her prime, had dropped out of school for her dreams and decided to follow her heart. Her admiration for her mentor, a married man, had turned into love. Because the man had everything she could want: money, power, a prestigious career, expensive cars, a luxurious life. Expensive gifts were just one love away. She had found that right person she said would support her dreams. Elizabeth Holmes and Romesh, Sunny Balwani. The love they lived wasn't just about romance. Like every love, theirs was also a kind of criminal partnership. Whether it stemmed from the magic of love or the devilish intelligence of the lovers is unknown. This union had turned into a conspiracy sufficient to deceive the world's smartest people. They were selling hope to people while living their grand romance. While there was a rosy picture in what could be called a toxic relationship, suddenly reality showed itself, and their entire system began to collapse along with their love. When that day came, Elizabeth Holmes had betrayed the man she said she loved so much. Behind this betrayal lies the untold love story behind Theranos. There's a romance that Silicon Valley tried to hide. Now we're taking you to that moment when everything began. The summer of 2002. Imagine you're an 18-year-old, young, beautiful Stanford student with sharp intelligence. You decided to participate in a summer language program in Beijing, not knowing that decision would profoundly affect your life. Your paths also crossed with a sophisticated and wealthy man. You're 18 years old. You have keen intelligence and an innocent heart. While you were a promising student at Stanford, you fell head over heels in love with a 37-year-old married man. What would you do? If you put yourself in Elizabeth Holmes's place, is there any guarantee you wouldn't experience the same feelings about Romesh Balwani? Stop here for a moment and think. Write your answer in the comments as we continue with the love story. Elizabeth, who was practically mesmerized by a man old enough to be her father, had followed a successful technology executive who had made millions in the dot-com boom and promised her she could change the world. Would you approve of such a relationship for yourself or your child? Holmes's reasoning was familiar. Holmes would later interpret her situation as, "He saw something in me that no one else saw." On the other hand, Sunny Balwani saw someone young, ambitious, and open to being influenced enough to believe in impossible dreams. One was looking through the eyes of love, the other through the eyes of business life. Which is right? Which is wrong? God knows. But it's certain that a voice echoed inside all of us. Mentorship ignited the fuse of the secret relationship. Balwani had been married for 12 years to a woman 12 years his senior, and hadn't yet filed for divorce. Which need of Balwani's was being met in this marriage? Maternal affection, the need for shelter, life's need to nurture him, is unknown. He was married and perhaps unhappy. He was looking for a new adventure in his life. Elizabeth, at 18, was looking for someone who would support her revolutionary ideas that would change the world. Someone who would be a partner in her madness. One person's idealism merged with the other's unhappiness. Balwani first destroyed his own nest. The fire and passion of love had embraced them so much that in 2003, when Holmes was 19, she left Stanford. Balwani was already much more than a mentor for Holmes. They were hiding their secret meetings and forbidden love from everyone. Family, friends, employees. No one knew about this love. If you were in their shoes, would you risk everything for love? Would you leave Stanford, start a technology-focused company whose reality hadn't been proven yet? And take all these risks just because someone older and richer than you believed in your dreams? Who would act courageously for love? Who would act cautiously? Let's meet in the comments. The calendar showed 2003. Elizabeth Holmes, studying chemical engineering at Stanford, believed she had made the discovery of her life, and that this discovery would make her rich. She believed so much in the needle-free blood test idea that she even left Stanford for it. She had some saved money, and also received support from her family because her family was also captivated by their little girl's genius. She founded a company called Real-Time Cures. But the company soon took the name Theranos, which would go down in history. This name was a combination of the words therapy and diagnosis. Balwani, born in 1965 in the Sindh region on the border of India and Pakistan, would later become her business partner. Her promises were revolutionary in healthcare and extraordinary for those seeking healing. She came before people with a simple but impossible promise: blood tests with just a single drop of blood. It meant a revolution in healthcare. Moreover, it was more profitable than ever. And most importantly, it was something that would impress and make Sunny Balwani proud. Their passionate love also brought financial risk. Balwani didn't just support Elizabeth's dream, he also financed it. While Holmes was raising money from her close family and friends, Sunny Balwani was behind her. When no one believed, he believed in Holmes's vision. Do you think this was love for Balwani, or was it a financial opportunity? Holmes had said about Balwani, "He made me feel like I could do anything." However, Holmes would realize much later. This was classic love-bombing behavior, aimed at overwhelming someone with intense love and approval, ultimately creating emotional dependency. This is where the key question confronted us. Was Sunny Balwani really supporting the woman he loved, or was he raising a young entrepreneur he could manipulate and control? Love was as dangerous a path as it was beautiful. By 2005, their love had evolved from romanticism to plotting conspiracies. First, they got themselves a luxury apartment. This place was as much a love nest as it was where plans for a company built on lies were made. The visible face of the company was pure, young, charismatic Elizabeth with brilliant intelligence who had left Stanford. Sunny Balwani was an older, experienced shadow. While running operations related to the company, they kept their relationship completely secret. There was a truth they believed in. Both were sure they were changing the world. What was actually happening was supporting each other's fantasies and raising financing like a balloon for their impossible promises. Since the medical device company was worth billions of dollars, no one knew that its CEO and COO were secret lovers. Employees, investors, board members, none of them were privy to this secret. And this secret would be the foundation of everything that followed. It was the 7th year of their relationship, and in 2009, Balwani officially joined Theranos as President and Chief Operating Officer. At 45, he was having an affair with his 25-year-old CEO girlfriend, and still, no one knew. Every love story contains a unique dream and a ruthless reality. Balwani, who painted Holmes's eyes and adorned her dreams, was known to employees as intimidating, controlling, and aggressive. He was terrorizing within the company, but they couldn't understand why Elizabeth didn't challenge him. How can a person oppose their beloved? For Elizabeth, he was the man she loved more than a business partner. He was the only man who believed when no one believed in her. In her statement, Holmes said, "Sunny taught me everything about running a company." But what Balwani taught were how to display fake confidence, how to silence skeptics, and how to believe in her own lies. There's a term in psychology, folie à deux, shared psychosis. When two people in an isolated relationship begin to believe the same delusions, they reinforce each other's false reality. There was no other word to describe Elizabeth and Sunny except this term. They had believed so much that they had become blind to their work, convinced that their failed technologies would work. It wasn't enough for them to believe. They had to convince investors too. They called this big lie vision. Moreover, This was a dangerous gamble, and endangering patients' lives had become innovation. No one wants to believe that the man or woman they're in love with is a fraud and creates a hero out of them. If you're in love with your crime partner, who can tell you that you're wrong? What would your attitude be if you were in their position? Elizabeth wasn't just an innocent lover. She was also a young entrepreneur who admired names like Steve Jobs. She wore black turtlenecks in imitation, gave minimalist presentations. With her rhetoric, persuasive power, and charisma, she would try to make realities appear different than they were, to make people believe that impossible things were possible. It would be naive to think of this only as a business strategy. This was completely the couple's cosplay. Sunny encouraged the transformation. He helped Holmes's voice become hoarse to appear authoritative. He coached her in presentations. Balwani was building the perfect CEO girlfriend in his mind. This was exactly what he wanted. Powerful in public, but completely dependent in private life. Elizabeth had told her friends that their relationship was like Steve and Lorene Jobs. Their shared delusion was complete, and they saw themselves as a technology royalty destined to create a revolution in healthcare. This was the point where the love story became toxic. Their love made honest business discussions impossible. When Elizabeth's employees told her that the technology they produced didn't work and expressed their concerns, she couldn't evaluate objectively. The reason was simple. Attacking Theranos meant attacking her relationship with Sunny. Promises chased promises. When Sunny gave fantastical promises about business-related timelines, Elizabeth wasn't in a position to say, stop. Because she couldn't disappoint him as his girlfriend. She couldn't fail in his eyes. Love blinded them in business life. The romance they lived created a company that was addicted and hostile to truth. There was no line separating Elizabeth and Sunny's business and private lives. They isolated their relationship and their company. They worked together all day, spent their nights together at home, and weekends planning business strategy. There was no one who could tell them they were losing their minds. Former employees were excluded from the inner circle. What they witnessed was their relationship intertwining. Business decisions and relationship decisions became one. While Elizabeth and Sunny were growing their playing house empire, Edison machines were rotting in the company's warehouses. The small tubes called nanotainer that Theranos claimed to have developed couldn't collect enough blood for accurate testing, so blood samples were being diluted. But the real disaster was that people with real health concerns were getting these tests done. If you were worried about your heart, diabetes, or pregnancy, would you get this blood test done? Especially when the results were manipulated and became completely unreliable. Would you trust a company that said it would create a revolution with a single drop of blood regarding health? When your health, your life, is at stake, how much would you believe in revolutionary promises? Comments for brave confessions. For this couple, facing reality meant facing the foundation of their relationship. Elizabeth was investing in her brilliant innovator identity, while Sunny was constructing himself as the smart mentor. Failure concerned not only their work, but also their love. As the increase in lies grew rapidly like company capital, they had lied to investors. They manipulated blood test results and endangered people's health. Because if you're in love with a lie, truth is your greatest enemy. While everything was going well, the crisis began to show itself in 2013. Company employees were questioning the new technology. Also, investors were making executives sweat with difficult questions. The media didn't remain indifferent to what happening either. After these events, Elizabeth and Sunny began to implement more control, more secrecy, and more aggressive legal tactics. They hired expensive lawyers to threaten journalists. They showed the door to employees who asked too many questions. The crisis wasn't only shaking the foundations of their commercial empire, but also wearing down their love. When your love story is your criminal conspiracy, relationship problems also become legal problems. Tyler Schultz was the grandson of board member George Schultz. He started working at Theranos in 2014. What he witnessed horrified him. Test results were fake. There were dangerous medical practices. Patients were being given potentially life-threatening false information. Tyler had chosen his conscience in the battle between his conscience and his wallet. despite his grandfather being on the company's management. He began to voice his concerns. He met the joint anger of Elizabeth and Sunny. The anger wasn't just directed at professional business life. The attacks were also aimed at personality rights. They turned his grandfather against him. Tyler Schultz had taken great risks to stand against the lover's delusions. Despite threats to destroy his family and endanger their lives, he was willing to pay a price. If you were Tyler Schultz, would you take the same risk? Let's invite the realistic ones to comment and continue with the story. John Carreyrough's investigation in the Wall Street Journal in October 2015 revealed the balloon about Theranos technology. The couple, who had been secretly in love for 13 years, from romanticism to financial empire, now had to face scrutiny. Elizabeth tried to fight, but Sunny realized the game was over. For the first time in their relationship, reality had struck their shared fantasy like a sledgehammer. FDA, CMS, and other regulatory pressures increased, and investors withdrew. Elizabeth and Sunny's relationship also finally cracked. In 2016, Sunny left Theranos, with the official statement citing personal reasons. But those close to the company knew the truth. The couple who had enabled each other's crimes was finally breaking up. And when crime partners separate, usually one becomes the scapegoat. 2018. Federal prosecutors charged both Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani with conspiracy and fraud. They would be tried separately. A decision that led to the most shocking betrayal in Silicon Valley history. In her 2021 trial, Elizabeth Holmes did something that shocked everyone who knew their love story. She completely threw the man she had loved for 20 years under the bus. In her testimony, she said, "He was controlling me." She accused Sunny, whom she claimed was abusive, of manipulating her, forcing her to make decisions she didn't understand, and even controlling what she ate and when she slept. Was Elizabeth really a victim of an abusive relationship? Or was this a calculated legal strategy? Could someone be both victim and perpetrator? After 13 years of shared lies and shared crimes, who was really controlling events? What do you think? Indicate in the comments whether you find Elizabeth or Sunny more innocent. Watching Elizabeth testify in court was like watching the entire love story being rewritten. The man she had once been head over heels in love with, whom she called her mentor and partner, was now her abuser. The relationship she had hidden to protect was now a tool for her legal defense. Of course, Sunny's lawyers didn't sit idle either. They characterized Elizabeth's claims as devastating lies. No matter what, the woman who had shared his bed for 13 years was blaming Sunny for everything. Prosecutors pulled out all the stops, presenting text messages and emails that contradicted the abuse claims as evidence to the court. The judge announced the verdict. Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts of investor fraud. She was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. Sunny Balwani, found guilty on 12 counts, sentenced to 12 years and 9 months in prison. The great love ended in federal prisons. They're both in different prisons. They'll probably never speak again or see each other's faces. The woman who used to tell her friends about her relationship with Sunny, "We're like Steve and Lorene," was now using that love to blame him. And thus, the great love ended. What they thought was great love ended in great tragedy. Actually, it turned out there wasn't any great love at all. Elizabeth Holmes is in a federal prison in Texas and married to someone else, a hotel heir with 2 children whom she met after Theranos collapsed. She's trying to build a new life while serving her sentence. Sunny Balwani is also in another federal prison, spending his days trying to understand the betrayal of the young woman he mentored and loved. This love story that ended in betrayal cost investors $945 million. 240,000 patients faced great danger due to false test results. They destroyed the careers of honest employees who wanted to warn the lovers and show them the truth. During this process, a scientist named Ian Gibbons couldn't withstand the pressure and committed suicide. Now let's get to why we opened the Missing Money Mysteries channel. Actually, there are real people behind every financial scandal. Ian Gibbons wasn't just a suicide statistic. He was a father, a husband, a brilliant scientist who couldn't live with lies. Tyler Schultz wasn't just a whistleblower. He was a grandson who chose truth over family loyalty and paid $400,000 in legal fees for it. These numbers aren't just ordinary figures on a balance sheet. These are interrupted lives, broken families, destroyed dreams, and lost hopes. When we talk about white-collar crime, we're actually talking about human tragedy. Perhaps the most tragic part of this story is showing that love, when it becomes obsession, control, and shared delusions, can create monsters out of people, even if it starts with good intentions. The protagonist of the story, Elizabeth Holmes, wasn't a simple fraudster. She was a young woman in love with an older man who taught her that lying was visionary, silencing critics was leadership, and their love was more important than other people's lives. White-collar Sunny Balwani wasn't a simple criminal. He was a man who saw potential in a brilliant young person and gradually turned their relationship into a conspiracy that destroyed everything it touched. In this story, we saw not only corporate fraud, but how toxic relationships can corrupt everything around them. We witnessed how unlimited love can become dangerous, and how two people lost all ties to reality and morality, becoming monstrous. After this video, when you hear about a new business scandal, ask yourself, what's happening behind closed doors? What relationships enabled this behavior? Because the biggest frauds aren't just about money. Maybe they're about love gone horribly wrong. Silicon Valley's most expensive romance is over. But the lessons it gave humanity about love, power, and corruption will last forever. Have you ever been in a relationship where love caused you to compromise your values? Have you ever had someone you completely trusted while ignoring all the dangers? And most importantly, if you were Tyler Schultz, would you really act courageously to speak against your own family? Subscribe to Missing Money Mysteries and share your reactions and views by commenting. We believe that every financial scandal has a human side, and every lost person represents a deferred dream. Hit that notification bell, and let's explore more stories together where money, power, and human emotion collide. In the next video, we're diving into another toxic business romance that cost even more lives. You won't want to miss it.